Hello, welcome to the Circle CLSD Fall Guidance Webinar. I'm Taylor Crosby.
And I'm Brenda Ermintrout.
We are using this webinar to emphasize some key items for you guys to keep in mind as the year gets going. So the first thing we'd like to talk about is the literacy newsletter that has been sending out weekly. I hope you guys have had the chance to kind of glance through it and see what we've been providing. We want to use this as a mode of sharing important information that we have to tell you guys. We also are going to continue to try and let you know when those things are going to be coming in the literacy newsletters. So just make sure that you are checking those out. I also would really value your guys' feedback on what you would like to see in the newsletter and how it is set up, because this is really for you guys. This also is going to be used as a tool for you guys to understand what's going on at other sites, and we want to share the highlights of what's connecting you guys, what's inspiring you, and in order for us to keep doing that, we need your submissions. So if you have something that's going on at your site and you want to share that, you don't even have to write. Just let me know and we can get something in there and highlight you guys.
The Striving Readers and CLSD sites will each have separate progress measures. If you are both a Striving Readers and a CLSD grant site, you will follow the CLSD progress reporting measures. Okay, let's go to the next screen. So the focus of the of each of the progress reports is self-assessment. So teams are going to collaborate to self-reflect on their goals and measurements and see where their progress is being made. This self-evaluation rubric will help you to determine where your team is on the level of implementation for your sites. And this same evaluation rubric can be used for the SRCL report and the CLSD report. I'm going to go into each one of those a little bit in depth here. So the sites that are Striving Readers only sites are going to continue to use the same report that you have used in the past. It's pictured here. It's your progress tool. Last year, at the end of the year, you turned in your evaluation and we did something like filling it out in green ink to show that there was new information added on there. So when you work on your report this year, I recommend that you open up last year's report that you turned in, look at what you said and where you're at with your teams, and then select another color of ink for adding your information for your third year. And that way you see your progress from one year to the next and you have all of your information in one point. If you can't put your hands on your progress tool from last year, please contact Taylor and she'll just resend it back out to you. Striving Reader sites will only have one turn-in required, and that will be at the end of the year. But we will refer to this implementation tool at site visits. So your team should be visiting it regularly and be aware of what their goals are and where you're improving. CLSD sites are going to be covering using a different report. When you applied for the CLSD grant, you used the web grant system, and the picture on the screen shows an example or a sample from one of those narrative reports. So we're building the status report in the web grant system, and it's going to look very similar to your program narrative report, but it will be slightly different. CLSD sites will fill out this report twice a year on the site. It will be completed in the fall and in the spring. Now I know that fall might just have you panicking and thinking, how soon this fall? We're going to be pretty lenient because we're still building the form. It's not even quite in there yet. We hope to have that out a little bit closer to the middle of this month, and we'll let you know when that's available. We will share the questions with you so your teams can start thinking it over, and we'll probably talk about this form at your site visit, but we'll be looking at later towards the end of this year, more like December, for you to have it completed and in. So there's no firm date on that. And then as we continue on through the program, if we have a specific date that we'd like to see your spring report in, we'll let you know. But ultimately, by the end of the year, your complete report should be filled out and in. So the fall report, a complete annual report is going to have 6 questions on it. Each level will answer their own status report. So the Birth to 5 will go into the CLSD grant on the web grants, and there'll be a Birth to 5 status report. And then there'll be a report for elementary, middle, and high. So 4 different reports that they'll turn in throughout the year. The fall report has 3 questions on it, covering question number 1 through 3. The report is going to be, the first is that drop-down box where you enter your self-evaluation of how you are implementing at the time, from not implementing that element all the way up to sustaining. I believe there's another word for it, which escapes me right now. You'll enter your self-evaluation. You'll set goals for that element. You're answering 6 different elements on the comprehensive literacy plan. So you'll answer for leadership and then instruction and intervention. You'll go on through the 6 elements, entering these 3 questions. And then you'll determine some measurements for how you'll know if you're progressing toward that goal. Now, there's no specific number of goals that you have to enter for each level or for each element. That's going to be up to you and your team as you work with your implementation liaison to determine where your team needs to do their work and enter those goals. So we don't want to make blanket requirements on what needs to be entered there, but we should be able, in looking at your complete report, we should be able to see what each level is working on as their main goals, and then get a picture of your site as a whole. So that'll be your fall report. And then in the spring, you'll answer questions 4 through 6. And it'll be very clear on there that you're answering fall or you're answering spring. You can see the questions vary a little bit in the spring because there's that continuous improvement movement now to the report. Where in the fall, you set up your goals, and then in the spring, you revisit those goals on the report and you tell us where you progress towards those goals. And then you consider your next steps. Do we continue on the path we were on? Or do we make a change in this area? And you'll have boxes to enter those pieces of information. So the best advice I can give you now is don't be nervous about this for your fall site visit. It'll be a time to visit with us independently about your questions on it at that time and for us to share that. And always remember, you can contact Taylor to ask her specific questions about how to do this. But right now, we're just kind of informing you that it's coming, but it's not ready yet. All right.
All right, your 4-year-old reports. North Dakota is required to report on student gains throughout your grant period. And the GEPRA measures for kindergarten through 12th grade are collected from your state assessments. But programs that have 4-year-olds must present their own measure of progress. So sites have to report the number of 4-year-olds making significant gains in oral language. Assessments will vary from site to site, but this must be completed to explain and report the process. Sites that have 4-year-olds enrolled in programs with regular attendance must assess and report on this form. Programs that are more drop-in nature, such as library, public events, and book checkout, our programs do not need to assess children. Try to start as soon as possible for this comparative information, and sites with striving readers and CLSD or both must complete this. This is something that everybody has to get done. That will be due on June 30th, so keep that in mind.
So your implementation liaisons for this CLSD grant is a requirement. All sites have selected their representative who comes through in one of the North Dakota Regional Education Associations. Those liaisons work as a team, and they are led by Jolene Gardy out of the Southeast Education Cooperative. And they work as a team, and they've set up their protocols together, but essentially They should be reaching out to you soon. I believe their first reach out was to be in September. If you have not heard from your liaison yet, please contact either Taylor or Jolene to see when that might get started. We should hear from them soon. And then you guys will work out your rhythms. I believe they'll be trying to check in kind of monthly with you, but that will all be determined as well. If you ever have any concerns about the work of the implementation liaison, what's being accomplished, or the direction they're heading you in, please don't hesitate to raise that discussion with Taylor if you have questions.
All right, your local implementation teams. So the role of this implementation team is to lead the improvement work of the site by putting leaders in to inform and guide the work at each of the levels. So this team fits in with improvement because with the CLSD, it should align to all of the other buildings initiatives. So they should meet to make sure that they are all on the same page. They will also connect with your implementation liaison in team meetings or any other format that your site would like to use. And though the literacy coach was not named to the required team roster, it is strongly recommended to include your coaches in this group. Make sure that you are also keeping those rosters current in web grants. There is a place in there for you to go to update that as things change.
Another requirement of the CLSD grant is the literacy coaching within your building. We've noticed as we're getting going that those roles are still being established. Some people are still being oriented to their role, but we do want to indicate that this is a pretty deep focus of the grant. So we don't want coaches in name only. We want them engaged in the work, joining eventually the literacy cohort that you will be hearing more about as they put together that work in January and later of this year. So by the springtime, coaches should be getting more information about the Literacy Academy. But we just wanted to make a reminder that this is critical work that is the core of what we're doing with this grant. So please do make sure that all of your coaches know that's their role. Assessment is a big deal for us with the CLSD grant. As we mentioned before, you're setting goals, you're looking at how you're improving, and ultimately what we want to happen is we want students to be improving their literacy. The CLSD grant is and the SRCL grant are both focused on supporting children from disadvantaged groups. So in our improvement work, we want to focus on all children, but we especially have to turn an eye to those students who are in our disadvantaged groups. I want to take a minute and point out those disadvantaged groups. So children who come from low-income homes, we can identify them through our free and reduced lunch identification measures. Children with disabilities, if they're on IEPs, if they're receiving special education support, they're part of our focus in the grant. Students who are learning English, and then children from disadvantaged ethnic groups. And in North Dakota, we especially focus on our Native American communities for this improvement work. So this form is meant to draw your attention back to how are those students performing academically in literacy. So this is not a required form, but this is required information. So what we mean by that is we like to talk to you about how are these children improving their literacy skills, and how do you know? So this form just is like a nice tight little way to look at how are all students doing on any particular assessment, and then looking at those subgroups within it. Now, I know many of you have your own data processes that are even more involved and more direct than this form. So we don't want to say that you have to use this form. We just created it as a way to point your direction to these subgroups and to have discussions with your team levels. And if you are in a building that hasn't done a lot of data work, here's a nice way to just start the discussion at your fall gathering of your implementation team. Hey, how are our first graders doing? We used this assessment when we got back. Let's look at these subgroups, or which subgroups do we have? So it's a supporting form Taylor can share it out with you, but I just want you to know it's not required, but the information is very important. So begin to think about how you will discuss and share these measures.
All right, the family engagement portion of the grant included some videos that we sent out earlier this school year. I want to emphasize that Superintendent Baszler does request that those videos be viewed by the end of January. So if you are still struggling with how exactly to get those videos out to your team members, make sure that you have the options available to you. You can chunk them into smaller pieces. You can even offer them for credit. They do work on any device. So if teachers want to do so individually, they are allowed to do that as well. Just make sure that you are keeping track of the impact it is having on academic achievement. And there could possibly be still a follow-up survey once we have determined the information that we would like.
Another piece of our evaluation that I wanted to let you know is coming down the pike is the professional development survey. So both grants are focused on systemic change to improve literacy, and one state evaluation of that work will be in the form of a professional development survey. This will come to all instructional, coaching, and leadership staff. I hope that it will be this month. It will come as an email, and that is not just your literacy staff. So don't just shoot it at your English teachers at the high, or you won't be putting it out. We will be sending it directly to your staff through our platform, and it will go to, so yes, your science teachers need to answer it. Yes, your math teachers need to answer it. We're looking at literacy across systems, not just within an English room, or not just in the, in a specific reading class or something like that. We are making efforts to streamline this survey so that it can be taken quickly and efficiently, and, not ask you questions of things that we've already got information on, like what class do you teach? That won't be part of the survey. It will be done in a way that we will know that information from the format. Leaders, I'm hoping that, in sending out the survey directly to your staff, we can follow up on that, and it will be minimal effort for you. What we want that information for is to help us design future instruction. So we do want to share that information as much as we can with you. We'll break it down. We'll look at it here so that you can use it to look at needs in your building and growth in your staff, and who's, what has been attended to. So we do want to use that information to inform what we're doing. And it's also a measure for our federal reporting from the state. So this will be an annual survey to determine our baseline. The survey that comes out in October will ask staff to report on what they did last year during the school year. And then they'll take that survey again in May to report on what they did this year. And then it will just be once a year after that. That will also come out to Striving Reader sites to collect professional development information.
All right, for your guys' budgets, the Circle Grants goal is to have all funds obligated by the end of January, and we would like to have that money spent by June 30th. Even though November 30th is the final date to claim Striving Readers funds, it would be in your best interest to have that all spent by June so that we can get those claims in and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. CLSD, just remember too, when you are creating your budgets as we continue on, that what you're asking for is reasonable, allocable, and justifiable within the grant requirements. And you also need to make sure that you are addressing the requirements within the grant, the audit, coaching, family engagement, and the literacy improvement. That should be your first focus when creating those budgets.
Claims are required on a quarterly basis for both Striving Readers and CLSD. You can claim more often than quarterly. You can claim every month if that's the way you like to do your records. But the quarterly claims are to help us keep track of what's happening at your site and keep everyone on spending track. You'll notice that September 30th of 2020 was the first reporting date for this year, so that just passed. So over the next 2 weeks, we should see claims for Striving Readers and CLSD rolling in. We think that you are in pretty good shape. Everyone's been on the web grant system using it. Whitney Paul is in charge of the web grants and the budgets, so she's your first reach out when you're working on those pieces. But Taylor is here to support you as well with that.
So we have included all of our contact information for any questions that comes up. Taylor Crosby, I'm your main contact for anything that may arise. I will also remain as the active part of administrating the grant and support behind the scenes.
That's me. That's Brenda.
Would be Brenda. I'm so good at reading. And Whitney is the first person that you will contact with all web grants support. So we are working as a team and are constantly consulting with one another on your requests and issues. So I know that this webinar has been a lot of information and very businessy, but we just want to make sure you guys know that we are excited about what you're doing and to continue supporting you in any way that you need us to.
This webinar will be followed by a memo so that you will have the slide deck and links and forms that were mentioned on this. You can expect that sometime next week. Thank you. Have a great day.